Waffle Gang, I do hope you're well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more Reddit stories, and if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting that like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too, and let's crack on with today's first story. Much love, guys. Now, today's first story comes from Radiant Elephant 5866 from the Am I the Arsehole Here subreddit and says, Am I the arsehole here for letting my ex's mum into my book club and making his fiance feel dumb? I, 28 female, dated Jim, 29 male, fake name, when I was 24. We separated when I was 25 and I haven't talked to him much after that, but I still sometimes speak to his parents, especially his mum, whom I have even introduced my father-in-law to, as they both love gardening. Now, I've been running a small book club from my uni days, with just a couple of lovely women, and we gather in my home library and talk about books on witchy or historical fiction. We also talk about gardening and old folk tales, and I just consider it a very fulfilling hobby. Jim's mum, let's call her Amy, asked me last month if she could join my book club, as my father-in-law had mentioned it to her when they were chatting at the nursery. She thought it sounded great, and I said yes, and I didn't think Jim would mind. Also, it wasn't his business. Amy then joined one session and gushed about it to her husband, who mentioned it to Jim. Now, the problem started there. I later learned that Jim's parents are not fond of his fiancée Beatrice, 30 female. Jim's dad thinks Beatrice has nothing in common with their family. The three of them are huge readers, and thinks Beatrice is shallow, as she works with makeup and clothes. She is a boutique buyer. Plus, the reason I interacted less with Jim and his parents following our breakup is that Jim dumped me for Beatrice, and even though I'm married and they are somewhat friends with my father-in-law, Jim's parents thinks Beatrice is not right for their intellectual son. Apparently, at some family dinner, Jim's parents kept on speaking over Beatrice and mentioning how well I had been doing. And Amy had been talking about what books the book club had recommended, and I guess Jim's dad had made a comment on how he wished he had a daughter to talk about books to, and that had hurt Beatrice. Jim later called me and told me about all of this, and that me letting his mum in my club had only given his parents more ammo to hurt Beatrice. I apologized as I knew none of this. I later asked Amy to not talk about anything book club related outside. I made up a lie about how we pretend to be a coven and can't discuss these things with the outside world, even though it felt awkward and childish. I thought that would be it. Except Beatrice and one of her friends had made scathing posts on Facebook and Instagram and even tagged my father-in-law in one of them, on how snobbish and mean-minded bookish women try to make other women's men because they can only read and act smart. Jim then again called me and said that Jim's mum had started a huge fight over it, and she had taken back the jewelry she had given to Beatrice for the wedding. I was a bit shocked, as I rarely spoke to Jim after our breakup and only interacted with his parents when I ran into them. We live in a small town, but he sounded and acted like I was the reason his family was going through a spat. My husband and father-in-law are saying that Beatrice was lucky I didn't think of retaliating and that I was not in the wrong, but I'm starting to feel guilty and I need a second opinion. Am I the arsehole here? Edit. Many people are asking, so yes, Jim did sort of cheat on me with Beatrice. He admitted to having an emotional affair with Beatrice and dumped me. I later heard that his parents did not take it well. Unless I was misreading this somehow, this just feels like such a non-issue for OP, you know, this is everyone else around her arguing with each other. It has nothing really to do with you. This is down to them, and the first part of the story, I was actually feeling a bit sorry for Beatrice for the way that she's being treated by Jim's parents. They seem like assholes to me. She's not right for their intellectual son because she does makeup and clothes. Oh god. But then she tiptoed into the arsehole section as well by making the scathing posts about you. Block Jim, and if mother-in-law continues to bring drama into your life, have her at the book club at the same time as well, in my opinion. But Ginger Prince says, not the arsehole. Jim's parents have been arseholes and Beatrice's reaction is pathetic. But none of this is because of you. Just stay completely out of it and tell Jim to deal with his parents and relationship without involving you. Tone the Line says, not the arsehole. To be honest, to such a degree, this shouldn't even be an issue for you at all. Jim's parents don't like Jim's fiancé. Sounds like a them problem. Like, not even a Jim problem. Nothing here even indicates there's anything wrong with Jim and Beatrice's relationship other than his parents, to be honest. They need to grow up. I'd be contemplating kicking her out of the book club just because of the unwanted drama, but That's about it. I smell boogers. It says, not the arsehole. Stay out of their drama. Not your circus, not your monkeys. You can be friends with his mother. It sounds like she enjoys you and your book club. Jim is projecting his issues with Beatrice onto you. It has nothing to do with you. She made an immature attack-filled post against his own mother's interest, tagged her future father-in-law, and created her own drama. Her actions caused mother-in-law to take her jewelry back, and good for her. Why give jewelry and your blessing to a petty bitch who likes to manufacture drama and force people into it? I would block Jim. He can have his prize Beatrice, and you can continue to have a relationship with his mum who values and appreciates you. Yeah, she could have gushed about you less to spare Beatrice, but Beatrice's behavior caused this whole situation, and Jim defending her and blaming you shows they're meant for each other. Perpetual victims shifting blame to others instead of owning their own feelings and behaviors. I would consider that relationship lucky. You got the best part of it, mother-in-law's friendship. Not the arsehole. Block Jim, let Beatrice alienate herself from her future in-laws with her own actions. Seems she wants the drama, posting her rants publicly and tagging people. Ridiculous. So OP comes back in to update the post and says, well, not much has happened, but I thought I'd give an update. Firstly, to all the people telling me why I'd let my ex's mum to my book club. Well, it has been 3 years. I hardly ever spoke to Jim and have no feelings about him or his life. He also seemed to feel the same way after the breakup, plus it's a small town. His parents were also very nice to me, and because they share some of the same hobbies as my father-in-law, I have to interact sometimes with them when I run into them at the bookstore, nursery, or the restaurant my father-in-law runs. I honestly didn't think that Amy just asking to be in my club twice a month would make things awkward, as we wouldn't be interacting outside the book club or becoming friends. As for my husband, well, he's mad about how Jim's parents have used my club to take a dump on his fiancée. But he is madder about how Beatrice took a dig at me when she didn't even know the situation. I later apologized to father-in-law for dragging him into this, and he said that he decided to end his friendship with Amy. I also decided to ask her to leave my book club, as this was not worth the drama she was bringing to my life. I called Jim up, told him blaming me for his family's behavior was not acceptable, and said I would not communicate with him further about this. I've been more than gracious, and honestly, some of the comments were right to ask me why I was still taking his course. I guess I need a wake-up call to stop being polite to my ex and his family. Jim surprisingly apologized for blaming me and passed the phone to Beatrice. She surprised me more, as she started by apologizing to me for the post and admitted that was uncalled for. Also, I got my husband on board for the call too, and he asked her why she was taking digs at me when she didn't even know me. Beatrice didn't reply to that, and Jim took over the phone and apologized to both of us. I then cut the call and blocked him. I also wanted to get this over with in one setting. So I called Amy and told her that it might be in her best interest to not come to my book club as it was causing problems in her family, albeit very politely. Sorry, the Asian in me cannot bring herself to be rude to elders no matter what. Amy took it in stride and admitted that dragging me into this was not acceptable. She said she would miss my friendship, but she understood if I didn't want to be dragged into her family affairs. She then started to rant about how shallow her son's choice of women was and whatnot, and tried to explain the situation that happened, but I was done with it, so I excused myself and cut the call. Father-in-law then told me that Beatrice had taken down the post, but he was pissed. So my father-in-law had already made another post tagging Jim and his family, and how they didn't know how to keep it in the family, and was certainly not as classy as they seemed to be if they were slandering other people on Facebook. Needless to say, it was a tiring event. I guess that would be it. From what little I gathered from Amy's rants, Beatrice was insecure, as when they got together, most people in Jim's circle thought of her as the affair partner and did not respect her. Plus, she was always self-conscious that Jim was well more red than her. I guess Amy mentioning me triggered some old insecurity in her. But then again, how was that my fault? I didn't know her then and I don't know her now. I'm very happily married and I haven't really thought about them in these years, before all this drama. Hopefully this is the end of it, so I won't be updating anymore. And I don't blame OP at all for just being done with that whole side of things. They all just sound like drama to me. Beatrice and Jim, they had an emotional affair, automatically makes them arseholes. Jim's parents looking down on Beatrice because of her job. Look, I'm not defending her, but looking down on someone because of their job like that makes them arseholes in my opinion. But when the mum phoned you to talk this out and you told her, basically out of the book club kind of thing, she still went on to moan about Beatrice to you. Like, take the fucking hint. OP doesn't want no more of your drama. But anyway, OP, enjoy your drama-free life from now on. Enjoy your book club. It sounds like a good time. But what do you guys make of this situation? One book club, lots of drama. Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below, and let's move on to another story. Ooh, spicy. Now, I do need to give you a warning before we do get into this next story. It does contain talk about blood. You will get it from the title, and if you do want to skip it, please feel free to do so. Timestamps are always down in the description and along the timeline below. Thank you. This is from Baby Bacon Bits on the relationship subreddit and says, my husband keeps telling other people about my periods. I, 31 female, am married to my wonderful husband, 35 male. We have also recently become first-time parents to our beautiful baby. My husband is pretty much perfect in every single way, except for one recurrent issue. He keeps telling other people very sensitive information about my gynecological health. Examples of this include telling his mother details about my menstrual cycle, telling his male boss when I was diagnosed with uterine fibroids, specifying exactly what kind of doctor's appointment we are going to, IUD insertion, when asking his mother to babysit for us. I've told him that him sharing this kind of sensitive information about what is going on in my pants bothers me, and he has apologized every time. This morning though, he did it again. Had a very severe first postpartum period last night, so bad that the Healthline nurse recommended we call 911. It was so bad I almost fainting from blood loss. I refused to go to the hospital, but my husband took the day off work to stay home and look after me and the baby today. I'm still feeling weak and dizzy today, so I appreciated this. However, this morning over breakfast, my husband mentioned that he had explained why he wasn't at work to a male co-worker over text. As in, he described exactly what was going on with me. My fibroid issue, the bleeding, everything. Bear in mind that I have never even met this male co-worker, and certainly wouldn't have shared this kind of information with him of my own volition. I got upset. My husband apologized. Familiar scenario yet again. I get it. It feels good commiserating about my admittedly very stressful and difficult to manage lady problems with his married co-worker and his mum. It helps him cope, especially after a night trying to decide whether I need to be rushed to the emergency room. Still, I am not comfortable with strangers or his mother knowing the details of what's currently happening in my poor, malfunctioning uterus. So, am I justified in getting increasingly more irritated and upset with my husband every time I find out that he's been discussing my gyno issues with other people, even though he says it helps him decompress and explain absences from work? How should I handle this situation? Edit. My husband is not autistic, nor does he have ADHD. Normally he is quite good about not sharing something once I tell him the subject is off limits. For some reason, he just doesn't seem to be able to get on board with the idea that anyone should find this kind of information embarrassing or invasive. OP gets into a discussion with one of the commenters below that called Madam Waste, who says, Jesus, these comments. If he needs to talk to someone so badly, he should see a therapist. Your medical information is literally that, yours. It's a breach of trust to talk about it without your permission. If this was a post about a wife constantly talking to a female co-worker and father about her husband's quick ejaculation or impotence, I'm sure people would be defending him. Father-in-law casually bringing up his medical issues. Hey champ, heard you're having a little problem downstairs. Don't worry, my plumbing ain't what it used to be. Yeah, I'm sure that seems totally okay. OP says that is exactly what it feels like. My mother-in-law has literally tried to bring up the volume of my period flow and make recommendations regarding it, after my husband overshared with her. To say this made me uncomfortable is the understatement of the year, and the thought of his male co-workers knowing similar details makes me want to crawl into a hole and grow moss. Madam then says, I would never be able to go to a work event if my husband told his co-workers about my vagina in any way, and I'm not a very prudish person at all. I just feel like your personal health issues are your own, unless you choose to disclose them. That's literally why HIPAA, HIPAA laws exist in the first place. OP says, that's what I told my husband this morning, and I'm officially never going to any of his work events if this information about gynecological health has been shared around his office. He seems startled, but also kind of like it was starting to click just how unhappy I was that his co-workers are privy to my personal info. Madam replies again saying I totally get it. I would feel prejudged and so exposed. Like a specimen on a table in a room full of strangers who know intimate details about my genitals. That's some horror movie shit. Honestly, lol. Opie says yes, this, exactly this. Jumping and waving and pointing at this comment. This is exactly how I feel. And I just wish there was some way for my husband to vent and process his feelings without spilling the scariest and most vulnerable moments of my intimate health to total strangers / my lacking in boundaries mother-in-law. And we'll check out the update in a moment, but some of the comments were wild and saying like OP was hiding behind shame and trying to drag her husband behind it as well. Like not talking about sort of like menstrual health, etc, etc. OP came in with an update a couple of days later and says, okay, wow, my original post evolved into a mess of something. So first of all, a few extra things to clarify. Yes, I understand that refusing medical advice to go to the hospital carries risks. Where we live though, unless you're literally on death's doorstep, you will wait 12 plus hours in an ER to be triaged. Sitting in a growing pool of my own blood with our baby in a crowded waiting room did not sound like a helpful place to be. Especially since I already know what's wrong with me. I'm 3 months postpartum with large, symptomatic uterine fibroids, and no, I'm not open to the possibility of a hysterectomy at this time. I want more kids. No, my husband is not autistic, narcissistic, or in any other way developmentally or emotionally limited. Neither is he abusive. Jesus, people, now I'm offended for my husband. No, my own family does not live nearby. During the fallout of my traumatic labor and emergency C-section, my mother-in-law and father-in-law were literally the only family support that we had on scene. My mother-in-law definitely has a habit of being a chronic oversharer with much fewer personal boundaries than me. But she 100% means well, even though it makes me a little embarrassed when she does things like send over various herbs and teas with father-in-law, along with detailed instructions on how to use them for menstrual problems. I also get that she's doing it from a place of caring. Yes, husband and mother-in-law are chronically up to their eyeballs in each other's lives. Always have been, always will be. He's an only child, and she was a single teenage mother when he was born. Plus, mothers being super involved in their adult children's lives is a bit cultural for them. So I sometimes wish she would share less about our married life with her. Heck yeah. Is that a hill I can and will die on? Nope. I knew this about my husband when I married him. So, the suggestions on my original post range from helpful, clarify boundaries, seek support, see the issue from both perspectives, to frankly toxic and abusive. Spread his personal medical information around publicly, berate him, insult him, leave him in the dark about my health status, and my personal favorite, threaten to leave him. Y'all, this man literally does everything and more for me. He helped me through serious prenatal and postpartum depression, drove me back and forth across the city to seek help for my issues, sits up with me at midnight on the bathroom floor to ensure that my bleeding eventually stops during an episode, stays home with me when I'm anemic to watch over both me and our baby, changes diapers, cooks me food, lets me dictate the pace of our postpartum sex life, checks that I'm taking my meds, does all the heavy lifting housework, tells me he loves me, reassures me and comforts me. Does this give him a free pass to discuss my gynecological issues in public? No. So he and I sat down yesterday and established clear rules. He officially has my permission to discuss my lady problems with one other lady of importance in his life, his mum. It helps him process after a scary episode. He admitted to crying out of fear for my safety after I finally fell asleep following the latest bloodbath, and his mum is our biggest support. As for work, here's to say that my wife is struggling with postpartum medical issues. No less, no more. If his boss needs further info, we will have my midwife draw up a doctor's note. My husband agreed to this, apologized, we kissed and made up. I also promised to remember to take my iron pills, because anemia. As for me, I learned a valuable lesson here. Be careful soliciting advice from the internet, because everyone will bring their own baggage to the issue. It's a little concerning how quickly so many people will figuratively advocate for flogging a loving husband in the public square, just because he's not handling a single issue perfectly. Thank you to everyone who gave constructive, thoughtful advice. Grumpy G asks OP saying, didn't you mention that you did all of that before, and then he again ignored your wishes? OP says, while I'd grumbled and expressed that I didn't like other people knowing about my gyno issues, I hadn't actually laid down a clear yes and no boundaries and established a script that my husband could use. Now my husband knows exactly who he can and cannot discuss my issues with, and what to say to people whom he cannot elaborate with. Grumpy says, good, let's hope he understands this time. I stand with my advice to not tell him anything till he learns, but also tell him that you would do the same to him and to see how he reacts and would like it. Not that you should really tell people about his problems. Cartoonist says, I'm glad you found a solution you are happy with, but please talk to your doctor about iron infusions. Supplements are fine for normal anemia, not for people with chronic bleeding conditions like this. Opie says thanks for the reminder. I actually did get a series of IV iron infusions in the final weeks of my pregnancy because my anemic fainting was to the point where my husband couldn't leave me unsupervised. Might be time to go in for another infusion. Now, what do you guys make of this situation? Have you ever dealt with a similar situation before? How did you deal with it? What do you make of this one? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. And just a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart for getting involved in today's stories. Your love, your support, your time always means the absolute world to me. So thank you so much for being involved, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Take care and much love.